hopefully this works.
Yeah, see how we go.
So one of the questions that we get asked a lot from families is, how do we best support our loved ones, particularly when they first come out of prison? Because that's obviously a really tenuous sort of time where we actually lose a lot of people in terms of, they do really well in prison and get back to being in a really healthy headspace and doing really well. But then when they get out, what, in your experience, what do you notice sort of goes wrong?
I think it's where, for a lot of people, they lose that structured routine within the prison system and the dynamics of prison. They're in such a structured routine, really, and it's a healthy structured routine because it keeps them busy, it keeps them ticking over, it keeps their mind busy. Then once they're released, they lose that structure because they have that time to almost relax. And when they relax, they have that free time. They sort of don't know what to do with themselves. So to be able to support them and help them through it, it's always good to just help them maintain that routine and keeping them motivated to always stay on that right track as well.
So I noticed a lot of the time in prison in particular, a lot of guys do really well because they're exercising regularly. They've got the same sort of sleep pattern. So there's, you go to sleep at the same time, you're waking up at the same time. Usually you're eating well, you're going to work. So there's sort of these structures in place that when sometimes the guys come out, there tends to be that sort of like, I want to just have a break from all that and I want to have a 2-week holiday and then I'll get back into it. And what I noticed is the guys that do that sometimes are more likely to not get back on track than the guys that when they get out, sort of get out and they might have a day or two just to orientate themselves and get their bank accounts set up and things. But then they're straight back into something like work, even if it's only part-time or, they've got a purpose and a plan for each day. That's what I've noticed.
Yeah, a lot of people take, they want to take the 2 weeks off just to relax, but 2 weeks quickly turns into 3, and then it turns into 4, and then it's like they lose track of what they actually need to do when they are released. So everyone gets out with, I want to do the right thing, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, but it slips away very easily.
I think as time goes, it gets harder to
come back. And in that process, in that time, it's like being mindful of who they're catching up with, because a lot of the time it's like, I see my mate and I seen this and he's doing really well and he's doing that. So it's easier to step back into that side of the lifestyle as well, very easily with that time.
Yeah. Do you find that it's more, like with things like social media, that it's, where people are actually it's easier to contact each other, I guess, through different mediums? Because one of the things that I suggest to clients is do away with your social media accounts until you're ready to sort of reconnect with people again. Yeah,
100%. When you think about, you and your mates that you've been in a long time, they see that you're out, the first thing they want to know is what you're doing, what are you getting up to, let's catch up, and, they want to, I'm not saying
reconnect,
but they want to reconnect, but they also want to, take you out, and they want to, show you what you've missed out on as well, which could be a big trigger for a lot of people. So no, it is, and it always comes back to, those boundaries as well, what you are setting for yourself, and, where do you really want to go and want to be, and if changing that path is something you're real about.
Yeah, I find as well it's that slippery slope of, you sort of think, it's okay to catch up with, them once or twice, and then that becomes 3, 4, 5 times, and then suddenly you're back in the thick of it again.
Back in the thick, back in the game.
Yeah, and so how do you, and you've obviously got experience with this yourself, like in terms of what do you do when you do have those friends contact you and sort of say, look, let's catch up, because they're still great, they're still nice people, they're still lovely, they're still part of your past, but they're obviously not fitting that new sort of
new side of you.
The new you, yeah.
No, 100%.
How do you find it?
I think it's just clear communication. It's always, respecting your boundaries that you set. They're not your rules that you set, but they're your boundaries. And, when you make that difference, it's like, I don't want to step over that white line.
Yeah.
Because I know the trouble, I know the red flags, and I know my triggers. So it's always about setting that clear communication before anything, before they even ask you if you want to go out. It's like, well, why don't I do that? So it's always about clear communication, communicating your needs first.
Mm-hmm.
But also, having that limit of respecting your boundaries as well, because it's easier to forget your boundaries when you're having a good time, right?
Apparently.
Yeah.
I don't remember. So in terms of families, because obviously we've got, some amazing parents who have done everything they possibly can to support their child, and sometimes it just doesn't seem to work. And so, as somebody that's had this lived experience, what do you see as being some of the best support mechanisms that people have provided you on your journey? Once you were released from prison and coming back into the community, what really helped you?
I think it was, when your child or your brother or your sister or your just a family member, that they are in prison, you get to see their raw, honest, person come out. So they're able to communicate what they want, what they need, what they're going to do. And I think when they're being open and honest with you, it's just helping them be accountable for that. A lot of the time when I wasn't open or honest with my family, it was easy for me to slip back and end up back in jail. But the moment I, had that connection and I was open, honest, and I told them my plans, they really held me accountable for those plans, which I think gave me that extra nudge. And just being able to, hold them accountable, but support them in what they really want to do moving forward. And if, finding that out is probably the best thing a family member, a mother or a father can do, because it's not always about what the mum or dad thinks is right for their child, no matter if they're an adult or not. Mum and dad always, no, you should do this or you should do that, but it's like making sure they find out what the person wants to do, coming out of prison, and then supporting them and keeping them accountable for that. Because I think accountability, as soon as someone gets out, just reminding them how important that is for them to be accountable for their own life. So giving them the responsibility of making those decisions.
So, because one of the things that I find, even as a mum myself, with my kids who are all teens, it's very easy to sort of fall back into that, you should do this, or I told you this, or I told you that, or, what I find is the languaging is so important.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And it's always remembering, like, yes, they're always going to be a child, but they are an adult.
Yeah.
So you've got to be careful.
So it's adult to adult discussion
adult to adult
rather
discussion.
than adult to child.
Yeah. And a lot of the time it's, the protective, protective boundaries or protectiveness of the family that are like, well, no, you don't do this because this is what's going to happen, So it's almost just making sure that we treat each other in that adult role, because they are stepping out into the adult world and they just need to be supported through that.
Yeah. So some of the languaging that I often suggest to family members is, sort of like when we spoke about this when you were in jail, you mentioned that you really wanted to do X, Y, Z. And I'm just wondering if that's changed.
Yeah.
Because what I'm noticing is that some of the things that are happening at the moment are not quite in alignment with what you said that you actually wanted.
Yeah.
So is there any way that I can help you come back into alignment with that?
Yeah.
And I think, sometimes the wording is just so important. It's almost like we become the coach in a way.
Yeah.
Rather than be mum or dad.
Yeah,
like it's sort of putting aside our roles and going, this is we're adult to adult. This is somebody that I love more than life itself, even though I want to strangle them at times. But, they're somebody that I really care about. But the minute that I get into fear, then I actually become quite angry, or I sort of, my languaging changes. So I'm always sort of suggesting that it's like, it's just fear of something that's going to happen. It hasn't even happened yet, but it's coming back into more that coaching style, thinking about my languaging and just keep it really clear. And I think you said before, like that clear communication. is so important.
It is important because your fears will mainly play out if you're putting them onto somebody else, right?
Yeah.
So it's important to understand that, like, your fear is not theirs; it's not their reality. So
True.
it's not going to play out, you know, unless you place it on them or you put your fears onto them and you keep trying to teach it into them. You know, so it's like 9 times out of 10, that's why we get reoffending. And they're going back because it's not necessarily their stuff they're playing out, but it's everyone else's pressures that's being placed on them. So it's always being mindful of that as well.
Yeah, I think, and I see that a lot. You know, I've been doing this a long time, and so some of the relapses that we do see, it's actually often the inability to put those boundaries down around. Actually, I know that that's what you think is right for me, but what I actually want is this, and sort of having that communication. And usually when I'm talking with clients in that space, I'm like, why did you not communicate that?
Yeah.
And there's this real fear from the client that, you know, I won't be loved, or I won't be accepted, or it's too, you know, they'll think it's wrong and they'll just judge it, or whatever. You know, it's interesting how you know, clients can get into that space. Yeah,
because it's a lot easy for, you know, family members to forget that, you know, coming out of prison, you're facing your own anxieties, you're facing your own little fears and your place. So, you know, as we are getting out of prison and that, we are trying to work out our own place, and we actually got our own anxieties going through our own mind, our own fears that are running out each and every day of even just being accepted back into society is a big belief around people coming out of prison. And, you know, you hear a lot where a lot of people, including myself, I used to say, like, I can't even walk through a shopping centre because I feel like everybody's looking at me. But in fact, you're looking at everyone that's looking at you. That's why they're looking at you. You know. So it always comes back to, you know, understanding what they're actually going through and helping them express themselves as well.
I think that's a really good point, because I mean, I've never been to prison, and I can only imagine the anxiety. I always remember somebody saying to me that they had a panic attack going to McDonald's, and there were so many choices that they actually were so overwhelmed and didn't know what to do, and then all the lights seemed to be on them, then they felt like an idiot, and then they ended up just running out of the store and just freaking out. And, you know, so it's those really simple things that we take for granted, that I think are often a struggle for some of the guys and ladies coming out of prison. So, you know, and that's that fear of not fitting in. I mean, can you talk a little bit more about that, about your experience with that?
And I think it's just coming from that place where once you're on that other side of the walls, you know your spot, but you're judged, and you're also you sort of know your place. So you fit in well. So
it's like an identity.
You have your identity when you're in a prison system, especially if you've been in for a very long time. So you're more comfortable there, and that's why a lot of people get institutionalized, and they keep reoffending and relapsing and going back, because it's that feeling I'm not fitting in and I'm not suitable out here because I'm different. So there's always, you know, oh, he's on this side of the fence and they're on that side. Where do I fit in? So it's almost when we do step out from those gates, it's like, where do I actually fit in here? How do I fit in? So it's always coming back to making sure you have that plan A, and if plan A doesn't go good for yourself, it's like plan B, plan C, plan D. So it's always reflecting and changing perspectives at all times, because, you know, once you're in that in the zone, I should say, of like, I'm a prisoner, you know, how do I ever fit in back into society or even get a job because I've got a criminal record? It's almost alleviating those fears.
Well, it's belief systems, isn't it? It's sort of like, and also that what we call addiction identity, but I think you know, you can broaden that to, it's anything around I am. So I am a failure, I am a prisoner, I am a crim, I'm a junkie, I'm a drug addict. All of those things are our identity, and so it's quite hard sometimes to remove that when we've lived it for so long. Yeah, definitely. And the belief systems even around that people are going to judge me because I've done this, or I've been to jail, or you know, I'm surprised how that limits so many people. I mean, I think it limits everyone, by the way, not just people coming out of prison.
It does.
But our belief systems are so powerful because that is what creates our reality.
That's how we play it out.
And so if a parent is noticing that, or a partner is noticing that, in their loved one, that they're really struggling with that, how could they best support them with that? Because I think sometimes the tendency is like, oh, don't be stupid, it'll be fine, which kind of feels quite dismissive and a little bit isolating for that person.
Yeah, sometimes it is uncomfortable having those conversations.
Yeah.
But it comes back to, the root. And the root is really getting them when they are coming up for release and making sure that they're clear on what they're going to do when they do get out. And once they're clear with you, most people, they stick to it. And just, I know for myself, with my own family, and every time I had, like a small hiccup come for me, it was always, let's reassess.
Yeah.
What's working, what's not working.
Yeah.
And it's always they'll sit down with me and go, what's going on, this is what more important. And it's reminding that loved one or that person coming out of prison what is actually important to them, and helping them focus their attention on that. And I think that's what really drove me with my family dynamic. It was always bringing back my attention to what was important and what I wanted in my life.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I think it always comes back to that, doesn't it? It's actually about, what do you want?
Yeah.
And so often, it's the simplest of questions and the most complex of answers.
Oh, sometimes.
But it is actually quite a simple thing to look at, like in terms of, what do I want, and keep coming back to that. So every single situation, what do I want from this? What do I want? And am I in alignment with that?
Yeah. And when you are in alignment, you're allowing yourself to make those mistakes. I think everyone's so critical of themselves coming out of jail, and they expect not to make a mistake.
Yeah.
Mistakes are going to be made because it's trial and error for somebody getting out of prison. Not everything's going to work. The job they might go for is not going to work. I know someone that's gone for 30 job interviews, fully qualified, coming out of prison, didn't get it. And not one, he didn't get one, and he didn't give up. So he still had that resilience, and he still persevered. He didn't let a criminal record stop him, and now he's back up on the mine sites, and
oh, great.
he's doing really well for himself. He's buying a house, but it may not work the first trial, or the 10th trial, or the 30th, but you have to be resilient. And you have to allow yourself to make those mistakes coming out of prison, because it is a different world, and those belief systems will hold you back. But and for the family as well, it's knowing how to allow them to make mistakes as well. Not be too critical. Because you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, or the mustangs, shoulds, how they come out. So when we think about that, it's like, okay, how do we make room for mistakes here and not be judgmental or critical, to them? Because 9 times out of 10, when you're, judging them on their mistakes, they're judging themselves 3, 4, 5 times as harder, and they're putting themselves down just as much.
And mistakes are so important to help you understand and really clarify what you actually want. As well. And I often say, by the way, 30 non-job interviews is actually normal for everyone. People can be highly qualified and have no criminal record and do really well in their career and still find it difficult to get a job. That's life.
And it comes back to those different beliefs though. Like I'm a criminal now, so it comes back to those beliefs like, oh, now look at me, what do I do now? Nah, this isn't working. And that's why I
think it's expectations though, right?
It's expectation. But when it doesn't come through, it's like, oh, see, this is why I'm not getting it. This is why, because I'm just got out of jail, or just because I'm got a criminal record. So it comes back to those beliefs that really affect a person, I think, differently coming out of prison. So a lot of them give up. But it's like, well, if that's not working, what else can I do? So it is plan A to plan Z if you got to. I think allowing yourself to make those mistakes, because through those mistakes you're going to learn.
Absolutely. And I think it's really unrealistic to expect that we're going to get it perfect. And you know, everything is about trial and error. Like you try, if it doesn't work out, then you adjust, and then you try that again, then you adjust, then you try it again and adjust. And I always think about, you know, sort of the sailing analogy, where to get from point A to B in sailing, you know, you actually can't go in a straight line. You have to tack, apparently.
Yeah,
They've actually done it, but it's like you're tacking, so you're zigzagging towards that destination, rather than actually getting the first go. And I think, where's the fun in getting it the first go?
Oh, that's
the fun is in the journey. The fun is in the failures and the highs and the lows, and that's the fun. That's called life. You know, that's the experience that we need. So, well, thanks for that. That was very insightful. Until next time.